Welcome to my talk about Saptune. My name is Sören Schmidt and I'm part of the SAP Technical Alliance team. And together with Angela Briel, I'm behind the development of Saptune. In the next 30 minutes, I will introduce a few of the new features of the upcoming version 3. So, what is Saptune? Saptune is a tool which we ship for SAP applications, which should make it easy for customer to prepare the system for SAP workload. So as Saptune is coming with a growing list of OS-related SAP nodes, which can be implemented individually. So you can say, I need that subnode, I need that subnode of my system to tune it. And to make it even easier, we have grouped related subnodes together to so-called solutions. So if you, let's say you have an SAP HANA system, you don't need to know which of those nodes are relevant and to pick them individually, you can say, please apply the solution HANA and all the necessary nodes get selected. Second thing I want to mention about Saptune is that it is a one-shot tool, because I have often heard that Saptune is referred as a daemon. And yes, there is a tune D involved, and I will talk about that later. But Saptune itself is just, as I said, a one-shot tool. It means if you call it with start, then it will save all the values of the system parameters it's going to change and apply them. That's it. And if you call it with revert or also stopping it, then it will restore all those system parameters again. But between both actions, there is no process, no daemon which is constantly running and maybe even checking the system or reapplying it. So it's important to know. Let's be all for the introduction, but I think almost anybody of you is familiar with Saptune and you are interested in what's coming with the next version. So I have put an history on the right-hand side. You can see that Saptune was first released in November 2016 for /12 SP1. And 3 years later, we did a major rework to version 2, which also broke some compatibilities there. And from that time on, we constantly developing Saptune further. So just to show that, I have put 2 examples, 2 milestones on the history line, so you can see that. And now 2021, it's time for the next bigger version 3. What's important to say is that Saptune development or the release of new packages is not aligned with service packs. So we always releasing new versions for all service packs currently under support. So just go to the lifecycle page at SUSE.com, and then you look up /SAP application, then you will see that at the time at the SUSECON 2021, you'll see that /SAP applications 12 SP3, 4, 5, 15 SP1, SP2 are under support, and also, of course, the upcoming SP3. And for all those service packs, there will be a release of Saptune 3. So you're not left out as long as you have a supported service pack. We plan the release for mid-2021. And this is like the little 3 dots at the bottom of the slide suggest only a few of the features Saptune 3 will bring. The green ones I will skip here because I will talk about them in more detail later. So let's focus first on the others, which I just want to mention because they could be important for you. First, we will remove the support of version 1. So if you haven't migrated yet from version 1 to version 2, please do it now, because Otherwise, with the upgrade to version 3, Saptune will not work anymore. You have to reconfigure it again. You should, but not only because of the new version, you should do a migration as soon as possible. Also, version 1 is deprecated, and the configuration which is doing, so the tuning which is doing, is almost 3 years old. So you are not compliant with SAP recommendations anymore if you still use version 1. So please upgrade. Also, we support or we add SAP nodes regarding clouds. For now, we have a subnode for Azure and AWS. We are talking with Google at the moment. Maybe we will have one with 3. If not, it will come just I think a little bit later with one of the next updates. The last two topics address issues we have seen in customer cases. So there are two major class of problems we have seen there. First one is that there are some trouble with setting up Saptune correctly. Most times there is a mix-up with subconf, or the tuned is not configured correctly. And with Saptune 3, we will ship little scripts called Saptune check, which will verify the setup and tell you if there's something wrong, and also will give you tips and hints how to rectify the problem. So we hope that you do not will run into the need of opening service requests for that. The second big problem or complaints is that Saptune sometimes does not tune correct. And if we have looked closer into the matter, then we have seen that in almost all cases, we have conflicting entries in sysctl.conf. Most times, those entries are coming from deploy scripts already on customer side, which is doing the tuning recommended by SAP nodes or some consultancies or some cases. And over time, they tend to drift apart. So depending which tool was started or was called last, either Saptune or sysctl-win, and the outcome is not predictable. So with Saptune 3, Saptune will very clearly warn on the screen and in the log if it finds parameters that it's handled by itself. It's also present in sysctl.conf and sysctl.conf.d files, so that you are aware of this potential problem and can resolve it. One of the biggest changes is in Saptune 3 is the removal of tuned. So from the perspective of Saptune, tuned is a legacy here. If you take a closer look to the tuned profile of Saptune, I put it on the right side in the little gray box, then you will notice that tuned is not doing any tuning at all. It just simply calls Saptune. And it is like this since the rework version 2, so July 2019. So you ask, if you don't need tuned, why you're still using it? Why not have a Saptune service, for instance? No. The reason for that is that there are, or we have seen potential problems, especially with subconf. So subconf is the, let's say, little brother or sister of Saptune, and it's targeting customers who are using plain SLES. But on SLES for SAP applications, you have both tools present. So both should not be run at the same time. Both are configuration tools to tune your system for SAP. So it's make not sense to have both. They would fight each other. And it was very simple as tune D because you can have only one profile. There's either a subconf profile or a Saptune profile, so no problem there. But when we remove tune D, there will be situations where we can, well, both tools could be run simultaneously. And for to introduce some safety measures there, we need some time, and now we have. So the latest subconf version 5 is already not using tune D anymore, like the upcoming Saptune 3, and to make sure that both tools don't can be started at the same time, both checking if the other one has already tuned the system. So if you start subconf, it will first check, oh, is Saptune already there? Has it done something? And if that's the case, it would say, no, I don't do anything here. Saptune is running and vice versa. So that is the safety measures we needed to implement. So that's the reason, because it took a little bit time before we really get rid of tune D. So you already might have guessed, if there is no tune D anymore, how to start Saptune. There is a systemd service called Saptune service. And on the right-hand side, I have an example. And of course, I've chosen one where it goes bad. So if you started here in this example, you see it failed. And there's almost only one case or one reason for that. And I mentioned this already. This is running subconf. So if you run a status there, it's the second line above the red one. You'll see there's the error message: attention, found an active subconf, so refuse any action. So what you have to do is first to use Saptune to stop and also disable the subconf service. So this disabling is important because this should prevent any future problems. So if you have subconf stopped but still enabled and you would reboot the system, we would running into the same problem again. And Saptune would say, up, can't do it, subconf is running. So we also check for the service to being disabled. Then the question comes, what's about tune D? This is also a daemon, it's also a program which is tuning the system. And we have decided just to warn about it and allow tune D to run in parallel to Saptune. We will see if this was the right decision. We had such customers in mind who may say, we want to have tune D to do additional tuning, which Saptune is not yet able to do. So, again, we will see if this was a good idea. So how to start Saptune correctly? This is a strange slide in a talk about upcoming features, but it makes sense. There's a reason for that. And the reason is that I have seen many customer configurations, and some of them, if it comes to setting up Saptune, they did all the little details like handling subconf tune D by themselves. Perfectly fine, you can do this. But if you're now upgrading to Saptune 3, this won't work anymore because there is no tune D. So you would have to adapt your scripts accordingly to the upgrade. But there's, since the beginning, already a Saptune command which is doing all those things. It is called Saptune daemon start. So I would recommend to change your script and just call Saptune daemon start, because it will do exactly all the necessary steps. It will stop and disable the subconf service. It will set the correct tune D profile. It will handle the tune D service as well. And the good thing about doing that is that the command Saptune daemon start will still work with Saptune 3. So we have a compatibility here. No issues. If you have Saptune 3 and you use it, you will see there is a deprecation warning. And the reason for that is that we want to get rid of this daemon part, because Saptune is no daemon and there is no tune D involved anymore. So that's the reason, because we deprecated it. And internally, it gets redirected to a new command. It's called Saptune service takeover, and it will do exactly that what it said. It takes over the system, so it will disable and stop subconf, as it would enable and stop the Saptune service, and it will also disable and stop tuned. So that in the end, Saptune will be the only remaining tuning tool. So if you use tuned or want to use tuned, you have to enable it later again, or you can, of course, use the additional commands we have implemented, like Saptune service enable start, or the corresponding systemd commands. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Tagging, this is one of the both major features we have implemented. If you check some or look at some SAP notes, you find that much of them, or at least parts of those SAP notes, are only relevant for a specific architecture or environment. So there's statements like only for /15, not /12, or use this only on Intel, but the power, or this is relevant for cloud, for AWS or for Azure, or only relevant if you are using specific hardware, like let's say non-volatile memory. And an example for that, I've put there the AWS node, because it's small. It fits good as an example purpose for this call. And this is the node which we will implement, or which will ship with Saptune 3. And it's a good example for that. Obviously, it's relevant only for AWS, but also it has recommendations only if non-volatile memory is used in that instance. And if you would apply such a node nowadays with Saptune 2, it would do it anyway, regardless of the system is on an instance on AWS, but also would do it if it's an on-premise system, a virtual machine, or an Azure instance. So you have to take care as customer which node to apply and which you should not. So, and we want go away from that and let Saptune this do more automatically. Also, we want to add those nodes to solutions, and we don't want to create specific solutions, let's say for cloud. So we don't want to have a Sapana solution for on-premise, a Sapana solution for on-cloud, or for AWS and for Azure. That's much too complicated. So we can just add those nodes to all solutions, and Saptune will figure out, okay, this is indeed in AWS instance, and I will apply the changes. Or, okay, this is not in AWS instance, so we'll skip this, because it should not be done here. So that's the idea. And we don't want to do such things in magic code, so that Saptune becomes like a black box. So we want to have it transparent. So we came up with the idea that we are tagging, or we use tags to parts of the SAP node configuration of Saptune to tell Saptune, please don't use this only if this is specific hardware or specific environment. And this is how it looked like. If you check the subnode configuration file of Saptune, you will see this is an ini style file. So there are several sections with a section name in square brackets. There are one for sysctl, for block, for CPU tuning. And with Saptune 3, we enrich them with tags, so to limit the scope of such sections. So the first ones we introduce with version 3 are like the OS version tag, so you can say only for a specific service pack. Then we have hardware-related ones for the architecture, for a specific vendor or model, or to be really flexible. Any file below sysclass DMI ID can be used as a tag here. So then to make it a little bit easier, if you're running on cloud, there is a tag CSP, the cloud service provider, at the moment AWS and Azure, but this will grow. And also for specific block devices to distinguish between them. So on the right-hand side, I have some examples where you can see there's a sysctl section. The first two, or the first one is relevant only if this is a 15 SP1 system. The second is 12 and 15. All service packs, so there are wildcards available in the tags. But only if this is a power system, so the tags are have an end connection. So all of the tags have to apply to the before the section really gets applied on the system. Then I have two hardware related tags there. One's only relevant for a specific Fujitsu model. Then they are for all Dell system because we are tagging or we check the BIOS vendor. Then an Azure example, and the last two for block sections are only valid if again specific RAID device has been built into the system, or the last one there is it's only applied on devices that have a specific name like an SDA or an SDB. Maybe they are different for some reason. This sounds a bit complicated, so this is a good time to tell that I have also in the technical showcase, I think that's the name, also a demo session for this talk where you can really where I can show how this really works on the command line, and if you have seen this in action, you'll see it's not that complicated like it may sound like if you hear in theory. Right hand, again, that's my AWS node I choose as an example here. Then you can see how this looks like in real life. This is three sections. Two of them, the sys and the block section, are tagged. So both are only executed if Saptune detects a AWS instance. And additional, the block section will only work for devices which have NVMe in the name. So obviously, those tags can be used in shipped nodes, but like any other Saptune feature, it's also available in custom nodes. So you can have your own configuration file using those tags. And of course, you can use it in overrides. Again, I will show this in the demo section, how this works. Any section can be tagged. Makes sense. And also with this new complexity, there are some rules which have to followed. And the first one is very obvious. Only sections where the tags match, all the tags match are processed. It's a little bit different with the block section and in combination with BL key tags, because in those situations, it means that the section is processed, but it only applies on the devices which match the BL key tag. Sounds complicated, but this makes more sense, and in the end, you will see it's intuitive, and it's exactly that what you would expect how it works. Also, sections get processed from top to down, so the order is important. So if you do use tags or in non-tag sections, then the more common one or the untagged one should be on the top of the file, and the more specific ones, so the tags with tags used, should be at the bottom, so that you don't have, because they would overwrite each other. The second big feature is staging. So what's that? If you update the Saptune package, then such a package can contain, of course, program fixes enhancements, so binaries, but also a subnode or solution changes. And if you update such a package, both parts will be applied. It's what you expect, what you know from RPMs. But this is a problem for some larger customers, because they maybe want the binaries installed immediately. Maybe they contain a fix they need, but the configuration changes, the subnode should be postponed because they have to go into a specific company-related release process. So for those customers, it's always a problem to install and update. And to help them, we have implemented the staging, meaning that if you update the RPM package, binaries will be installed like always, but the SAP nodes are going into a specific so-called staging area, and there they have to be released manually if you are ready, if you have finished this release process. So binaries gets updated, the subnodes stay how they are. With this staging, it has to be enabled explicitly. The reason for this is that I think not any or not many customers, or some of our customers really need that feature. And the other ones should not be surprised by a change in default behavior. So I think most of you are perfectly fine. Then if you update a Saptune package, you know there is a new version, there's new binaries, there's new features, there are fixes there, but there are also all the latest updates in the SAP nodes. That's okay. So if you this won't change. So if you want to use staging in Saptune 3, you have to enable it. So there's a specific command, and to be more precise, with this new feature, there is quite a lot of additional commands available. And in my final slide, I want to walk through an example here. So let's assume we have staging enabled, and there is another Saptune 3 update package. I have installed it. And to check if there are any subnode updates in my staging area, I do a Saptune staging list, and voila. Again, my example node, there has been a new version 67, which is now in the staging area. So, and Saptune also suggests next step. It says if I want to release it, I have to use the command Saptune staging release. Or maybe first I want to check what's the difference between the new and the old version. And there's also a command called staging diff. So if I execute that, I get a neat little table. And on the middle column, I see this is working version 66. It's in the working area. So this is what Saptune currently using if you're doing apply and reverting. And on the right-hand side, I see version 67, staging area. This is the new one. So, and there I can see for some reason the IO schedule has been changed from none to MQ deadline. And also there is a new parameter called kernel control alt delete, which is new because there's a little dash in version 66 that doesn't exist before. And this is newly introduced in 67 set to 1. So please keep in mind, I made this node completely up, so no real tuning here. So now I can see what's the difference, what will be the change. And if I'm okay with that, the next step would be do a Saptune staging release. And if I'm doing that, then first there will be a little analysis of the change, and Saptune will give you some recommendations or some hints or some information what would this release would mean. So first, it tells me there is an override file for that node. It's a good tip. Maybe I have forgotten about that. So I should check if my override file still is okay. Maybe I want to adjust it, or maybe I even want to delete it. Then the node is enabled and must be reapplied, meaning that the release process is not changing your system's configuration. It's just copying or moving the node from one area to another. So if I release the node now and do nothing, the new version would first used if I restart Saptune service or reboot the system. So if I want to have it immediately, I have to revert and reapply the subnode. That's what the second line means. And then there's a lot of information. nodes there, and it tells me that this node is part of quite a lot of solutions, but neither of one is currently enabled. So, okay, if I say that's fine, I know I want to release it, I just have to confirm it finally, and then the version 67 got released. And next step, I haven't shown that here, would be either restart the service or reapplying the specific node. So that's all. Again, I will show this in my demo session, and if you have further questions, ideas, or recommendations for Saptune, I have put my email address right on the final slide, and I guess that's it. And thank you for attending.